Welcome to Mental Health Momentum, a Silicon Slopes podcast. I'm Dr. David Morgan. I'm a licensed psychologist and the Director of Mental Health Awareness here at Silicon Slopes. Now, on this podcast, we talk about mental health issues in business and beyond, and we look for solutions as well. I'd like to introduce my guest to you today, Don Weber. I forgot, it's Weber, right? Not Weber?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
Got it right.
Yep.
I didn't even ask you that before.
Yes.
We talked all the time before this.
Yep.
So let me tell you about Don. He is a self-described jack of all trades, master of a few. He is a musician, former D1 football player, a reader and writer, nonprofit fundraiser, professional oyster shucker, skier, bartender, and mountain biker. Born in California on a family vacation, he says that's a story for another time. Don identifies as a New Englander, and his passion for chasing the greatest snow on earth is rivaled only by his love for Fenway Park, commercial shellfish farming, and jam bands. Don is a full-time fundraising leader for the local nonprofit Wasatch Adaptive Sports, which we'll talk about at length here in just a bit, of Snowbird, and is an outspoken advocate for Utahns with adaptive needs on a mission to share the outdoor sports that he loves with people of all abilities. You're likely to find Don putting in the first tracks on Wilbur Bowl or pedaling up to the top of bobsled, sometimes on the same day, reading, writing, or picking on a guitar, jumping into oceans or in alpine lakes, listening to the music at his favorite Utah ski bars and concert venues, or quoting his favorite books, song lyrics, or movie lines to no one in particular. Thank you for being here. That's a great bio. Did you write that?
I did. Yeah.
Nice. You're an author too, right?
Yes.
You write?
I do some writing for Ski Utah. And yeah.
Excellent. You can tell. So, well, again, thanks for being here. We connected, I think, at a town hall, Silicon Slopes Town Hall.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, a few months ago.
And you came up to me and said, hey, this is who I am. This is what I do. And I thought that sounds like a fantastic thing to talk about on the podcast. So I'm really grateful you're here. Tell me about just your overall interest in mental health. Sure. And how that's led you to kind of where you are now.
I like to start kind of with the personal angle of, someone who's been through mental health struggles, as have most people.
Right.
A variety of different generalized anxiety and post-traumatic stress. And it's something that so many people deal with on the day-to-day. Obviously, you read my somewhat chaotic bio there. I've worked in a number of different spaces. Obviously, now I'm on the nonprofit side with Wasatch Adaptive Sports. But prior to that, I spent many years in the advertising industry and worked for a number of Silicon Slopes companies, and just realized the value of supporting mental health in the workspace specifically through sort of my own struggles. And in going through those things, recognizing that the companies that were supporting people, providing those resources, just really valuing that and appreciating that in the workplace. And it kind of led me to want to pursue a career pivot 4 or 5 years ago. I applied to be a social worker. I got into the graduate social work program at the U. And at that time, I also found Wasatch Adaptive Sports, and I went down a different path. But passionate about helping people support their mental health. And, been through it from the personal side, as have most of us, and just really value that from the company perspective as well, and what you're doing here with Silicon Slopes and setting up this platform for us to have this conversation.
Thank you. Yeah. And you're probably doing about the same as you'd be doing as a social worker at Wasatch Adaptive Sports in some ways, in working with people of different abilities. And that I want to talk about that because I love that. You already answered my question, how you got involved, but just tell us about Wasatch Adaptive Sports.
Sure. Yeah. In 2021, I was working for Traeger Grills of Silicon Slopes as well. I was working in the brand marketing department, and Traeger had a number of great employee programs, one of which was their volunteer program. I was an avid participant in that program, and I got exposed to all sorts of great Utah causes. And one of them was Wasatch Adaptive Sports. I started volunteering with their events and with their adaptive lessons at Snowbird, at Sundance, and just really quickly fell in love with the service that they were providing. And eventually that led me to want to make the full-time switch. So it was such a great volunteer program that I actually left the company, and Jeremy Andrews, who I believe is on the Silicon Slopes board, has remained involved with us and was fully supportive of that. But that's kind of how I got here.
What does the program do?
Wasatch Adaptive Sports empowers people with disabilities to improve their physical, mental, and social health. And that's kind of what we do. And what that looks like on a day-to-day. We have one-on-one ski, bike, paddle, yoga lessons year-round, and they're scholarship supported. So any participant to Wasatch Adaptive Sports that needs our help, those participants and their families come out, they ski, they bike for free. and that's where the donations go. We were founded actually in 1977.
Wow.
Yeah, so about 48 years ago, 49, as of January 1st,
Yes.
by a ski instructor at Snowbird Mountain School who saw a need. 1 in 4 Utahns have a disability, which is a huge number. Still kind of stunning to me sometimes that 25% of our neighbors have a disability.
Right.
Yeah, he saw a need, and he went to Snowbird's ownership at the time and said, I want to share these mountain spaces with everyone. It's such a perk and benefit of living in Utah. It's why I moved to Utah, and many others, and why they love it and stay. And the resort said, what do you need? And they've taken that same attitude ever since through multiple ownership groups. And we've expanded our services to include biking, summer programs, veterans programs. We've added Sundance down here in Utah County, among a number of others.
Nice. One of the things we were talking about earlier, and just kind of the perceptual shift that's needed for individuals to start to think about what they can do and not what they can't do, right? And I think that's at the heart of your message, is that let's look at what you can do, even though you might have, I mean, are you dealing mostly with people with physical disabilities? You're talking about intellectual disabilities as well?
Yeah. Any permanent disability
Okay.
is eligible to participate with us. And I mean, I love that kind of, we talked a little bit about as well, is the phrase I hear from a lot of our participants is kind of redefining what was possible for me, and flipping that question of what you can't do to what can you do.
Right.
Let's figure it out. Let's get the right equipment set up for you. Let's get the right infrastructure. Let's take care of this financially. If you can't afford, skiing and biking are often cost prohibitive as it is.
Sure.
So, folks that have disability in their family personally deal with a lot of financial barriers, different mental health index that are more problematic statistically. So getting those folks out and removing those barriers and just asking that question of let's make this work for you is kind of the essence of what we do.
And that's really at the heart of any sort of mental health change as well. As I was reflecting on this, preparing for the podcast this morning, and I was thinking, let's say you have a person who's, lost both her legs or something, and she's thinking, well, I'll never be able to ski. And she's like, well, hello, here's Wasatch Adaptive Sports. Guess what? You can, right? We just have to do it a little bit differently. We have to, make some adjustments and those sorts of things. And there are so many people that struggle with mental health issues that think in terms of what they can't do. I talk to people all the time, and they say, well, I have so much anxiety, I can't go to the grocery store, or I can't speak in public. And I get it. And there are a lot of cases where that can become very, very difficult. It's almost never a case of it's impossible. It's just a case of there are barriers. And if we can talk about how to remove those barriers, whether it's internally or externally, like you guys do, I think that makes a huge difference for people. Can you imagine if people with anxiety just thought about, well, what can I do? And that was their focus during the day. Or a depressed person, what can I do? I think that would change the entire color of their perspective.
Absolutely. And it's such a paradigm shift, and it's so cool to see that come to life every day at Wasatch Adaptive Sports. Seeing someone get the right equipment, and our whole thing is just come up, just make it up here, and we will take care of the rest. We'll fit the equipment. We'll set incremental goals. We set goals with each of our participants in each season. What do you want to do? What do you want to get out of this? For some folks, it's I want to tackle the most difficult terrain at Snowbird. I want to bike 100 miles. We have world record adaptive bikers in our programs. And for others, it's, I want to enjoy the outdoors for 2 hours at Liberty Park once a week. And we treat each of those, each of our participants' individual goals with the same kind of zest.
Sure.
And to your point about mental health, I know we'll get into it, but the mental health benefits of being outdoors are enormous. And it's something that we've written into our mission statement in the last 5 years as it's transitioned from anecdotally, this program changed my life, not only physically, but it changed my mental health as well, increased self-confidence, self-esteem, self-image, better relationships with friends and family, overall quality of life. It's really incredible the results that are coming from this organization that just occupies a really important place on the social services and mental health services kind of spectrum. So
it's interesting how, because I always think about 200 years ago, I wouldn't have had a job. No one needed a psychologist. the early 1800s, and it really wasn't until kind of the mid 1900s that people started talking about it quite a bit, and that was around the same time that we started being inside more, right? Where we weren't building log cabins and stuff like that. And so I think there's absolutely truth to that, is even just getting outside, just even for like 10 minutes in the day and getting some sunshine, which fortunately we have a lot of in Utah. So that's great. I think people they don't understand just how beneficial that can be. Do you have a particular like inspiring story from one of your participants?
Sure.
I'd love to hear one.
Yeah, and it's a personal one too. When I first found Wasatch Adaptive Sports, I was volunteering with other staff members of Traeger at an event at Liberty Park where we host our bike rides once a week through the fall and summer months. And yeah, I was volunteering to help out as one of my first exposures to the organization. And I met a veteran amputee, and I sat with him for a while. We were kind of working the information table as people were coming by. And he said, I've not seen you around here before. What's your name? What's your role with Wasatch Adaptive? And I said, I'm Don. I work at Traeger. I'm just a volunteer. And he was like, please don't like diminish what you're doing.
Right.
Your volunteerism, this organization changed my life. I was a veteran, a long haul trucker, and had diabetes that led to having disability and amputation. And, I was unhappy and kind of an angry person for a number of years before I found Wasatch Adaptive. And this organization really turned it around for me, he said. It gave me something to do physically, and it brought me my independence back. Again, it focused not on this person is an amputee, here's what you can't do anymore. It's let's find solutions to figure out what you can do. So I met this person. 3 months later, I joined Wasatch Adaptive Sports as a full-time staff member. And through a conversation with a coworker, they had mentioned a participant of ours who had passed away. And they asked me to pull up some pictures. I was the communications person when I first joined the organization, and said, his name is Kerry. And it was this person I talked to had passed away. And it was a really intense experience for me because this person had like unknowingly changed my life, right? And so not only was Kerry's story really important to me and a good kind of representation of the power of what Wasatch Adaptive Sports can do for people, but he also personally changed my life, right? So you just never know what kind of the conversations you're having, what the impact they're going to be. And Kerry, in lieu of flowers, and he asked for donations to be made to Wasatch Adaptive Sports at the time that he passed. So that's a really important story to me, and kind of how I got to Wasatch Adaptive Sports. I think it's emblematic of the work we do. We work with this past year, we worked with 1,188 individuals, providing about 5,000 experiences to those individuals. So Kerry's story, is carried on by more than 1,000 people every year are having these experiences made possible, with Wasatch Adaptive Sports. Yeah. So.
Well, and he may have transformed your life as well, right? Yes. Because, you're there one of the first times as a volunteer, and who knows if you continue to volunteer there, right? I mean, maybe you volunteer at a different place next week or whatever, or you lose the interest or you don't have the time or whatever, but you find this kind of incredibly impactful situation, connect with this individual, and here you are, years later still talking about it. I love that. I want to talk about volunteers as well, because oftentimes when we get stuck in mental health challenges, we become very inward focused. And I get it, because you kind of have to, circle the wagons and that. But if we can get outside of ourselves in those moments, it can make a tremendous difference. So how do you recruit volunteers? How does that work? Because if people are thinking, I need to do something with my life, what a better place to go?
Yeah, agreed. And I was actually talking to our executive director about this the other day. There's few things like volunteering with Wasatch Adaptive Sports in the world anymore. I think you get to do something you love. You get to be in beautiful mountain spaces. We have a volunteer programs with our biking program and with our skiing program. And you get to make a tangible benefit, a tangible impact in someone's life in a very one-to-one way. The way our lessons work is we have paid instructors that are paired with participants one-on-one to help them further their goals. And then volunteer instructors who are in our volunteer program are able to join those lessons and provide support.
Do they have to be specifically trained in this? Like if they've never been skiing before, can they be a volunteer ski instructor? Or
Great question. We have a 2-hour training, which is mostly, disability sensitivity,
Sure, yeah.
kind of understanding, okay, we're not going to touch the equipment. We're going to ask the participants, can I help you?
Exactly, yeah.
Those kind of basics. We do ask that participants that come to ski volunteer with us have an intermediate ski level
Right,
on their own
okay.
equipment. But we do provide lift tickets to our volunteers as
Okay.
well at Snowbird and Sundance and Alta. And then our bike program, again, just being proficient in biking.
Right. Not falling down.
Yes. Yep. And being able to lend a hand if needed.
Okay.
But our volunteer program is really unique. I mean, it can look very different from day to day. It can be very hands-on. You're helping load a piece of equipment into a chairlift, a sit ski, do some heavy lifting. It can be just blocking for a skier with a developmental disability. As they're making their way down the slopes, you kind of ski behind them and make sure that folks are kind of going around them and giving them plenty of space. And it can also be just keeping someone company. It can be more of a friendship role of skiing or biking with a group of veterans, and you're there in case something happens and they need a hand. But so much of it is just connecting with people and the social element of outdoor sports. So.
And you mentioned earlier that some people, like they said, I just want to go be in Liberty Park, once a week for 2 hours or something. So are there people who are not necessarily interested in the activities, but just want to be there with someone?
Yeah, I think it's like every disability, like the goals just might be different.
Sure.
I think some folks might have mobility disability where making one lap around Liberty Park over the course of 2 hours, like that is what their experience with Wasatch Adaptive Sports will look like for the rest of their lives. And there's other folks who come to us and they say, I want to progress. I want to do this.
Right.
This is my goal. And just treating both of those goals like with the same respect and importance, right? It's like for some folks, they just want to come out. They want to feel the fresh air. Their disability might be such that progression to independence isn't available for them.
Right.
And we're available. Wasatch Adaptive Sports is available for them in an ongoing and indefinite basis to kind of fill that need in their lives. So that's why the volunteer and participant experience can just be so varied.
Right. Right.
You have people in our programs pursuing like the highest level of athleticism. And then you have folks in our programs who, I'm here to recreate. I'm here to get outdoors, pedal a bike to the extent that I can for an hour or two. And so, we work with children as young as 3, adults as old as 99. So sometimes it can be just keeping a kid company and hanging out, and yeah, it can just be very varied.
Do you find people being surprised about what they actually can do? I mean, just because like you talked about and kind of the, sensitivity awareness, and that unfortunately our culture has been very negative towards disability in the past, and a lot of focus on what you can't do. Even terminology, that's changed over the course of the last 50 years has evolved to be a little less harsh. And so I wonder, do you have people who come in with like smaller goals, but then end up making larger goals because of that?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's my favorite part about what we do is hearing people say, I can't believe I just did that. I never thought we could be a bike family. I never thought we could be a ski family. We encourage our participants to bring a support network person, whether that's a family member, a friend. It changes the identity of folks, of what they can achieve, of what they're capable of. And so having those moments, we work with a ton of families. About 30% of our participants are children. And it's like, my child got to ski with his brother, his sister. My child got to ski on our family trip to Snowbird, or we just never even thought this was available to us. And hearing that as often as we get to hear it is really incredible, and just shows the extent of the need for what we're doing.
And it's benefiting not just the individual with the disability, but their support network as well, right? I mean, everyone is getting a taste of what they used to think was impossible is now possible, where sometimes the family will think, oh, well, now our options are limited, right? Because of our circumstance, only to find out that you just have to think about it a little bit differently. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, working with 1,000 people with disabilities each year doesn't even capture the secondary benefits, that are rippling out into those folks' communities.
Yeah. And let's talk a little bit more about like the mental health
Yeah,
thing. So you
absolutely.
said you guys have kind of anecdotally looked at mental health. So are you like tracking like surveys and stuff like that?
Yep.
What are you doing?
So about 5 years ago, we implemented a survey system. So it's an opt-in for our participants on a seasonal basis. They answer a battery of questions related to, self-esteem,
Hmm.
self-confidence, before program, after program measures. And there's, write-in fields and such as well. And it really just confirmed a lot of kind of the groundswell that we had been hearing anecdotally for many years, which is that these programs have the power to be transformational to people's mental health. Anything from, you know, this my child's, development disability psychologist has noted 12 consecutive months of growth in the classroom here or there, and they attribute a lot of that to Wasatch Adaptive Sports. It's just so incredible to see that the ripple effect of getting outdoors, of learning how to ski, how to bike, in the independence of our participants, just extends so deeply. So yeah, 97% of our participants reported improved self-confidence last year. 94% reported improved overall mental health. 93% reported overall improvements in quality of life. And it's just, to me, it always speaks to, it's so much more than just the skiing and the biking
Yeah.
and
Yep.
the paddling. It's everything that comes with it. It's the feeling of achievement.
Yep.
It's the community you're building. It's everything that comes with it.
Yep. It's what it represents. It's the act of achieving the thing is one thing, but the idea of what was once considered impossible is now possible. I mean, our world would explode with hope if everyone just had that idea, right? If everyone thought what's possible instead of what's impossible. When you do the polls or the surveys, are you testing just the primary participants or the secondary, like the family ones as well?
We do. So caregivers can also answer.
Because I'd be fascinated to hear about them too, right?
Yes.
Just that those secondary people.
Yep.
Like, are they experiencing, an increased mental health by seeing their child or their loved one or whatever it is, have this kind of better quality of life?
Yes. Yeah. We measure improved relationships with friends and family, which is always in the 80% improved each year. And then participants, support networks, caregivers are also encouraged to fill out the surveys as well. And what we see a lot there is, my child's self-confidence went through the roof. They were getting bullied at school, and all of a sudden they have something to relate to their peers about.
Right.
And, whether it's children, trying to fit into the education system who might be on a different spectrum of ability, they come to us and say, Wasatch Adaptive Sports adapts to them, not the other way around. They're not having to adapt to a system or an infrastructure.
Which is what they've had to do their whole lives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's pretty incredible to hear that and to see that come through in the results as well.
What's something you would suggest? Like you mentioned earlier, 1 in 4, right, are dealing with some sort of disability. Although, and notwithstanding that's 25% of the population, I would say that most of the general population still struggles to know what to do, and how to interact with someone with a disability. Do you have any suggestions here as a kind of a parting thought of what can people do to, I don't know, just to help or to normalize relationships or not make it more awkward?
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question. I think first, just internalizing that number, 1 in 4, these people are our neighbors.
Right.
This is so many people that come to Wasatch Adaptive Sports, my nephew, my daughter, my mother had a stroke. Disability is the largest minority group in the world that anyone can join at any time. And so I think people look at it as like, I'm apart from this. And that creates some of that awkwardness that you mentioned. And when I first joined the organization, I felt some of that. Sure. Of like, I'm not used to being around people who move differently, who speak differently, who interpret the world differently. And there's just truly no substitute for just being around it, for being immersed in the community, for volunteering for an organization like Wasatch Adaptive Sports, any number of wonderful disability organizations there are, especially in Utah and in the country, and just putting yourself in those positions, and being open to learning, right? As like, I think one of the most important things is like that we try to get to reframe is instead of reaching for a chair, instead of taking away that choice from one of our participants with a disability saying, hey, can I help you in this way?
Right.
What can I do?
Sometimes the answer is nothing. I can do it by myself.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And and I think that's a really important switch of just immersing yourself in that number of like, this is 25% of people. If you extrapolate that number to Salt Lake Valley alone, we're talking hundreds of thousands.
Yeah. So if people want to learn more, more about the program, how to volunteer, where do they go?
WasatchAdaptiveSports.org.
That's easy.
And there's a volunteer link there. There's a participate link there. Anyone with any disability is eligible for our programs. And then if financial assistance is needed, 97% of our participants receive financial support to participate in our programs. Many who have the means, elect to voluntarily make contributions. And then donations as well, which is kind of where I sit in the organization now. I started as a volunteer instructor about 5 years ago. I worked in communications and marketing, ran the website, applied my kind of communications background that I had lended to a number of Silicon Slopes companies over the years to the nonprofit, and now I do fundraising. We're 100% donor funded, and so there's a donate link there as well. Every single dollar goes right back into the programs. I'm trying to keep the quality of our program as high as it is, and keep that scholarship program in place. Those are sort of like our flag in the ground. We will not compromise the quality of what we're doing and the attention to each individual person with a disability, as well as removing that financial barrier.
Yeah. So if you can't volunteer, at least you can donate, right?
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny, I think we look at time and donations, monetary donations, differently sometimes, but everyone in the world just has different things to contribute, and maybe if you have time, you volunteer, and that's looked at as like your contribution. And if you have expendable income, you
don't have time. Exactly.
Yes, you can do it that way. So
nice. Well, Don, it's been a pleasure talking with you. Thank you for all you're doing to help people that just to give more hope, right? To give them more hope in their lives. So I appreciate you coming in today.
Yeah, thanks so much, David. And I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to chat a little bit more about Wasatch Adaptive Sports, and I really appreciate what you're doing with Silicon Slopes. Such a needed thing, and I'm glad that the Slopes is prioritizing that within its community. Just having attended a number of the events that you guys have put on, it's making a big difference. So thank you
very much. And thanks to everyone for listening today. Remember that change starts with you, and together we can increase our mental health momentum.